Welcome into the latest edition of the Spot Track podcast. Brandon Kravitz here along with Mike Ginnitti. The integration you didn't know you need is live. SpotTrack.com just got even better for sports bettors out there. You can visit SpotTrack.com as you always do and also become part of the Bettor Edge community with lines that are there that are priced better than the local sports books that are out there, because this works like peer-to-peer betting. So it eliminates that middleman and ultimately allows you to make more money doing this sports betting endeavor that, well, a lot of you would be doing already. Sign up for the first time. You get $20 on the house. Just use the promo code SPOTTRACK at sign up. That's bettoredge.com or on their mobile app. NBA draft last night. I was complaining before the draft that they decided to split this thing up into two nights because I feel like a second round broadcast on its own is a waste of time for everybody. But I like watching the draft in its entirety. So last night, as 11 o'clock was rolling around and my eyes felt like they had 10-pound weights on them, I said, you know what? I will complain no more. I am thrilled that I don't have to convince myself to stay up for the second round of the NBA draft. And I now completely understand why they decided to split this thing into two.
And furthermore, you and I kind of looked at the schedule today sports-wise, and it's pretty darn light, isn't it? So guess how many people are just going to fall ass backwards into the second round of the NBA draft because it's the only thing going in town. They kind of know what they're doing in these leagues, don't they?
Yes, they do. And it's not just last year felt like it was Bronny James specific. You don't have anybody that has that sort of name value that'll be drafted tonight if you're listening to this on a Thursday, but still we will just mindlessly watch it anyway. So a lot of angles that we could look at here, perhaps none more intriguing than that of Ace Bailey, who went 5th overall to the Utah Jazz. He seemed to snub his nose at the process of the draft entirely. He's the only U.S.-born player that said no to every single invite to an NBA facility. And the Jazz, who I had heard were completely out on him, came out of left field and said, screw it, we're going to draft him anyway. Your thoughts on the move? Because it doesn't seem like Ace Bailey's very happy with it. And and what kind of money did he potentially cost himself by driving down his value? Because this is a guy that if he had put his best foot forward was probably going to be the second or third pick.
Yeah, I was hearing third quite a bit. And yeah, it's somewhat significant, right? It's probably about a $9 million decrease from pick 3 to pick 5 and 6, where he ended up 5th to the Utah. So there's certainly some monetary value there. Would he rather be in Philly than Utah? I don't know. I would think so from a standard of living. And he certainly didn't seem pleased in his interview, although he did not win that battle. I don't know if you watched the Toronto pick happen. That was something.
But here's the thing with the Toronto pick, who I think it was Colin Murray Boyles was the guy. I can perceive his 4-letter F word as a relief. Sometimes you just
like an
curse
exhale.
Oh my God, I can't believe it's finally over. So I could spin it that way. When I first saw it, I didn't think it was as negative as social media decided to take it.
I mean, we're going to spin it however we want to, but I think you're probably right that it was like, oh, I'm finally drafted. Like maybe he thought he was going a couple of picks earlier and it was a bit of an exhale. Yeah, I could see that. But, if he wants to drop an F-bomb for having to go to that Toronto team, I could get that too, because it's been a couple of weird years for that Raptors organization.
That was a very odd pick to me as well, but for more in the weeds reasons of an overabundance of wings. But the Ace Bailey thing.
Yeah, can I talk Utah, man?
Please.
This reeks of the double Ainge era, right? Because we've got Danny now in Austin, sort of running the show in Utah.
The kid.
And and both savvy in their own rights, both have a lot of clout under them already, even in Austin's early career here. This might have just been, hey, Ace, we're taking you all along, right? You're going to be a big part. You're going to be the feature of this organization, because I think there might be a trade or two out from that roster in the next couple of weeks here. Not for more for basketball than for anything else, because financially they're in a pretty good spot here. But man, to go Ace Bailey and then Walker Clay, I mean, they nailed this thing yesterday on paper, right? In terms of going from a defensive minded effort the last couple of seasons where they had hopes of sneaking into the backside of the playoffs to now what could be an offensive juggernaut, right? A creative offensive minded organization. They may have flipped the switch, not unlike Danny Ainge did with Boston 7 to 8 years ago, and Boston is still reaping the fruits of that. So there's a world where that entire organization just turned on its head because of some stealthy play and some back channeling work to make sure that Ace Bailey was going to fall to 5, and that's exactly what happened.
I'm just not convinced that by the time we get to the start of the season, he's still going to be on the Utah Jazz.
Really?
I think they had the rumors out there that the Utah Jazz were calling the Celtics about Jaylen Brown. The Celtics have admitted with a megaphone that they are in a minor rebuild with Jason Tatum out. Would it surprise anyone that a kid that wants to be playing on the East Coast and wants to be an NBA superstar in a big market wouldn't love the idea of going to play for the Celtics? And the Jazz seem like they want to take winning seriously. Well, Jaylen Brown helps with that a whole lot more than Ace Bailey does. I think it works for both sides if you can find a way to make the money work. So I think I usually don't buy NBA rumor smoke. I feel like I'm a pretty good repellent when it comes to that, but this one makes too much sense.
My God, we're just 6 minutes in. You got to cool down a little bit here. We got 25 more minutes on this. I did not expect it to
the best
turn
I got.
there.
Hit end recording right now.
Oh my goodness. Of course that makes sense. That kind of thing doesn't really happen. I mean, when's the last time that a draft pick essentially forced his way to a different organization? Was it the kid from the Rockets, right? That New Jersey kid? I'm drawing a blank. It doesn't happen often. I mean, Kobe did it. We've had a few instances, right? But man, this is something.
It just seems like a perfect storm when you talk about the market, the team, the direction that the Celtics are very obviously going in. If they're not going to take winning seriously this year, which they moved off of Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday, two guys that were instrumental in them winning a championship. We'll get into this further on the podcast. Maybe we just dip into it now since we've got the smooth transition, but they're saving themselves a ton of money. Why not just continue to travel down that path and see where it takes you?
I get it. Steve Francis, by the way, I figured it out. That was the kid.
I was going to say Stephon Marbury, but I'm like, I don't think the Rockets were involved in that. But yes, I was a big Steve Francis fan.
Yeah.
He played for Orlando for a little while.
Is this the next iteration of that? I guess it makes some sense, but and certainly there's a connection between Utah and Boston to make that kind of situation happen. So I guess I'm in. If you're in, I got to be in because you don't do this kind of stuff.
I'm all in on this. I think it makes a ton of sense for both sides in the direction that they're going, and it's really exciting for the Boston Celtics to be able. If you're going to rebuild, flash fry rebuild, who better to start with than a guy that has the offensive upside of Tracy McGrady? So I'm in on that. Wow. Now let's talk about this financially in terms of what it means for the Boston Celtics, because they were shedding salary like snakeskin. What are we looking at in terms of what they now do not have to pay in terms of luxury tax because of where they fit into the second apron after moving off of those pieces?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. They started this whole process really this week with an estimated tax bill of about $240 million, $238 and change to be specific. And once the Porzingis and Holiday trades process, that's going to be trimmed down to $44 million. So it's a $200 million savings pretty much out of the gate here. Obviously, when you factor in the salaries that won't be paid as well, there's a little bit more added on to that. So if you're seeing some bigger numbers out there, it's probably including the whole enchilada. But we're just talking about the tax bill here. And there's now a path to get under the second apron. So you're talking about being able to aggregate salaries and trades and pulling out some of those exception restrictions that come with being second apron teams. It's potentially a big move. And by the way, if they take it to the level that you think with the Jaylen Brown situation, well, now you're talking about a completely financially healthy structure heading into 2026 when Tatum would return potentially with, 3 out of 5 brand new starting rosters around him. So I don't know that we get to that level there, but just on its surface right now with these two trades, they've become a second apron healthy team and shaved about $200 million of tax bill.
which is crazy to think. And Jason Tatum could come back in a year and look around and go, what is this? What happened while I was gone?
Selfish plug, by the way, because Scott Allen, our feverish developer, has been doing, you know, the kind of thing where we say, hey, we should have this. Well, we've been doing that about every day to him because things keep coming up, especially with the NBA. If you go to the Boston Celtics multi-year table on SpotTrack, which is the view where you can see 2025 through 2030 with a specific NBA roster, the way that we're operating right now is because we're in limbo, right? Because July 1st isn't here, because July 6th and when a lot of these trades will officially be processed isn't here yet, the numbers are in limbo. So if you go to the Celtics view, you're going to see Drew Holiday and Porzingis still on the Boston Celtics roster on SpotTrack. So you're going to be able to see the before, essentially, of how the finances were. There's now a pending roster tab, which you can now quickly flip back and forth between the current roster and the pending roster. So you can see exactly the numbers that I just spewed out, the before and after, with all of these teams, the draft picks, the pending trades, all the things that are not officially official, to kind of see the back and forth of how things are going to change if everything goes through. So that was a kind of a last minute Hail Mary move by our developer last night to build this. And it is now live on the multi-year view for the NBA. And it's pretty damn cool.
And you can cycle between years. This is amazing. Yeah. Good stuff. Way to go, Scott. He earns the award. Now, if you were to hand out let's hand out a quick offseason trophy to NBA teams that have been the most creative financially in getting to where they want to be. Every team has its own motive, its own strategy and goal of what it's trying to attain. The Celtics would clearly be on that list. The Washington Wizards perhaps also setting themselves up for a wild 2026. Is there a team that you look at and say, golf clap in what you've done financially from a strategic standpoint?
I don't think necessarily yet. We're getting there. I've got some completely opposite takes with some teams based on what we saw the past couple of days, but those are the two kind of home run hitters right now. Atlanta has done some pretty darn good work here over the past couple of trade deadlines, and now this leading up to this offseason with the Porzingis move, I think, to reestablish themselves, kind of to rebuild themselves on the fly around Trae Young, something a lot of teams I don't think would go through the actual work to get to. The team I'm watching pretty closely here is Chicago, because I do think that's a team, especially in the East, that could push quickly. And I thought they'd be a little bit more active last night leading up to that first round. We'll see what happens with the second round, because quite frankly, part of shedding salary in this second apron world, which, man, I'm so sick of hearing and saying second apron, but it's just the nature of the beast, is the second round pick, because it's not a guarantee, because it doesn't account against your cap during the offseason. It's kind of like the placeholder move. That's why we're seeing a lot of these trades include 4 and 5 second round picks. They're valuable, right? Because if you hit on these picks, you've got maximum draft, rookie contract value, but they don't really factor into the salary matching. They don't factor into a team's guaranteed pool. So I do think there'll be some activity leading up to, and if you're listening late Thursday, to tonight's second round, especially with the contending teams, especially with the big boys. So I would imagine that some of these teams, these fringier teams like Chicago, could get involved around this second round draft to make themselves better. Because who the hell knows in this East, Brandon? What a complete change. The left and the right, the West and the East, completely different conversations right now. There are teams trying to die in the West because they know they have no chance. And there are teams that probably would be dying, but have a legitimate chance to be a 4 seed right now all of a sudden.
It is the most fascinating landscape of the NBA that I've seen in years in trying to track the direction, the wide openness of the Eastern Conference, the transition of the West. I look at a team like San Antonio, and their offseason's not complete, but I want to give them so much credit, because it would be so easy right now to say, push the chips. And I think they see such long-term success in front of them. And I admire their patience, because I don't know that I would be able to act in the same way. I'm looking at that Chicago breakdown right now in the multi-year stretch that you guys have at SpotTrack. Chicago's put themselves in financial hell for a few years, but come next offseason, this team is going to be a player. So I would imagine that at the trade deadline, if they don't make moves before then, they are going to be the most active team if they want to solidify themselves ahead of the next offseason. But this is definitely a team, feels like they haven't done anything in a while and we're waiting for it. But I think you nailed it, Mike. That it is going to happen. It's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, no question. They're on that list, right? They feel like maybe that mini Orlando team from a couple of years ago, as you kind of grew into that team, and now you're all grown up, right, with the big boy trades. So
right,
they feel like
now I cover a big boy team. It's been a while since I've done that. I started in radio in Orlando, and Dwight Howard was here, and it's been purgatory since then until now.
Yeah, that's been a lot of ebbs to get to the flow. Let's put it that way.
For sure. One more note on the NBA before we transition to some NFL talk, and then I want to talk baseball as well. This one was making the rounds yesterday online, and I saw, okay, where did this come from? Oh, it came from you. Cooper Flagg's numbers: $62 million in his rookie deal, $359 million in his next contract if he gets there, and then a potential supermax worth $509 million after that, bringing us to a grand total of close to $1 billion made before he's even done with his career. Yeah. Absolutely wild when you break that down.
Yeah, and it's not fair, and I feel bad attaching this kid to it. And I've been asked, why did I do it with this kid and not many of the other number one picks? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. A, he's 18, barely 18. B, he's on a good team, right? He's not going to the worst team in the league by far, despite the fact that he's in this loaded West that we're talking about. And C, because of Kyrie's injury, I think this kid's going to be on the ball like 30% of 2025, right? So he's going to have a chance to prove that he is a grown man out of the gate. And if that's the case, and he starts making Rookie of the Year sense, all NBA sense, even next year, now we start getting ourselves into this path, which is he goes from year one and year two to a 30% jump with that second contract, and then a 35% jump with his third contract. And these are the actual numbers. And I know people want to think that we're just kind of BSing for fodder here, but there's math involved here, right? Like I went to Keith Smith, I went to the resident expert who has the 10% cap increases broken down in a spreadsheet and on Spot Track. And he was able to actually do the quick math. These are the actual numbers based on 10% salary cap increases for Cooper Flagg if he maxes out the next 8 years of his life as an NBA player, which is not crazy to think, right? He's one of those generational talents in terms of expectations, and he's on a team that should be able to keep him lifted up from the get-go here. So he's got as good a chance as anybody to go this path. And if he does go this path, yeah, he'll be a billionaire by 32 years old, based on NBA standards.
Unbelievable. From one unicorn to another, Travis Hunter finally signed his rookie contract this week. 4 years, $45.65 million, fully guaranteed. A lot of that front loaded as well. Is it the guarantees that hold this sort of deal up? Because there's pay structure involved that is cemented based on where you get selected. So I always find it interesting when these things kind of get stuck in limbo.
There's two things going on here. And it's a good question. I'm glad we're kind of bringing it up because it's being misreported a little bit out there. The $46.6 million guarantee on his 4-year contract was set in stone. It was going nowhere. That he's the number 2 pick. There's just no wiggle room there. But the two things that do have wiggle room are he's got a $30.5 million signing bonus. Generally speaking, even with the top picks in the draft, if you're not a quarterback, you're going to have to break that cash payment up over at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 payments. Well, that didn't happen here. He fought hard to get that $30.5 million all right now, all as one lump payment. And if you're asking, that's selfish, why does it matter? I can just tell you what every single agent tells me every single time, which is it is thousands times better to have the cash in your hand, in your bank account, than not, for whatever reason, right? Something happens. Look, we're going into the summer months of the NFL, and I can just tell you more than a few players will get themselves in trouble, right? And if Travis Hunter were to be one of them, and he only had half of that signing bonus in his hand, Jacksonville has some leverage, right? Not a lot of leverage. It's still going to take a lot of lawyers and arbitration, but you just want as much cash in your hand as humanly possible at any point in time. So he won that battle. The battle I'm waiting to see if he won, which I doubt he won, is the offset language. Jacksonville has been rigid with this. They are not handing out offset language, which means you are not going to be able to double dip on a Jacksonville Jaguars rookie wage scale contract, right? They have won this battle with every player, including the number one pick a couple of years ago. So my guess is he didn't win that battle. I'm waiting to see the actual PDF language here. But those are the 2 points of contention. And at least in terms of the cash flow, it seems like he won out.
I wonder if investment has anything to do with this
Big
as
time.
well. You
Huge.
you can't invest $30 million that you will probably make in the future. You can invest it right now if you have it in your account, and then your money makes money.
Big
and
time.
it's something that for a lot of us that don't have $30 million, it's hard to think about it that way. But
yep,
it makes sense that you'd cash in hand, always better than cash in the future. Now, in terms of the one that has not been signed yet, the last we've got some remaining holdouts out there, none more notable than Shamar Stewart with the Cincinnati Bengals. Why is this still at a standstill?
Pretty much the exact opposite. So Cincinnati has not, in previous first-round picks, at least not with their non-quarterbacks, put in any kind of language that essentially says if you screw up at any point in time, or if you suffer specific injuries, which, most of these players, because of the arduous college and off-season trainings that they've go through as kids, suffer some sort of injury, right? And there's some concern that maybe chronic injury or off-field incidents could come into play here. And they want specific language, by the way, which other teams have gotten into rookie contracts. This is not a brand new thing. It's just brand new for Cincinnati, right? So they want void language in this contract that says if he screws up or has specific injury, and I don't know exactly what that would be, but that's the going rate, then we can void the guarantees going forward on your future salaries. And furthermore, we're gonna shuffle around how some of these training camp roster bonuses work so that more of the money is allocated to the in-season versus the training camp bonus, so that we have more money in hand than you do at certain times. So there's some back and forth here. And again, none of this is unprecedented for the league. It's unprecedented for a Cincinnati Bengals rookie contract, and that's the fight. And I think there's a lot of people on Shamar's side here. However, we're getting close, right? We're like 3 weeks from training camp. Trey Hendrickson is still holding out, and he's going to hold out, right? Because he can at this point of his career, which means essentially the two top edge rushers for the Cincinnati Bengals are embattled right now, heading towards training camp. And this is a team that should be top 4 or 5 in the AFC. So we'll see.
It's always the Cincinnati Bengals, isn't it? Let's get to our quick hits to wrap today's episode. I'm going to start with a simple question that requires a complex answer. How in the world are the Rays doing it again? I picked this team to finish last in the AL East, I think, every year. At this point, it would be off-brand for me not to. And yet here they are, a game out of first place in the AL East. It blows my mind.
They're 10 games over 500. They're still wildly injured. And oh, by the way, dealing with their top contract, probably going to jail, and Wander Franco. Everything that could go wrong, including the stadium, including the fact that they're the third lowest tax payroll on the books. Everything about this thing shouldn't work, and yet they're 10 games over 500 in a game out of first place in arguably the hardest division in all of baseball. So it's just them, right? Now, they couldn't get to the finish line last year, right? They didn't quite get to that 90-win mark and sneak in last year. I don't think they're going to be there this year either, Brandon. This is probably just a really good stretch, but it's just proof that this team is somewhat bulletproof. And at any point in time, if some of these things come their way, right, some of these injuries heal up and maybe get themselves back to full bore, they're going to actively spend because they know, at least now, at nearly rock bottom, that they can kind of do no wrong. Their development process is so strong, and their simple free agency process is kind of bulletproof, like I said, to the point of where if they ever want to throw 50 to 60 million at an offseason, they should be right there with the Yankees at any point in time, despite the drastic, $200 million gap between their payrolls.
So the concern that I would have in regards to that is it looks like Stu Sternberg is going to sell the baseball team to somebody, and usually owners don't spend big before they sell because they want the sale to be worth more to them. So is that a factor here in terms of this not going that direction?
Yes and no. I mean, you want to be relevant, right? You don't want to be a lowly team, and certainly that this stretch is helping that whole process, even if they do fall off in the dog days of summer. Um, and I know you're kind of bullish, or maybe not so bullish on the sale itself because it's been back and forth so much in the local market, but it does kind of feel like this one has legs. And
I'm definitely bullish on this one. He's selling the team.
Okay, good.
It's
So,
gonna happen.
so if that's going to happen, then I agree with you that this probably happens sooner rather than later. And don't you think this stretch is enough, right, to seal the deal? Because what's going to happen, and it's kind of the elephant in the room that I haven't been discussing because it's an off the field incident, but they're going to save 150 million on Wander Franco's contract. That's a lot of money not to have to pay for unfortunate reasons. But that's a big boost to then turn around maybe 1 year later and say, let's reallocate half of that money to the roster with some of these extensions internally, and also with maybe one or two splashy free agent / trade acquisitions. So, but the big bugaboo with this, as you know, is the stadium. What happens if this team wins 92 games and has a home playoff game in 3 months here, right? Because I don't think they're going to do it at Steinbrenner Field. Do you?
Well, play a playoff game?
Yeah.
They have to.
They'd be pissing away so much money doing that, right? I mean, there's so many
They don't have a choice. There's no roof on the Trop.
No, but I is there another element? Could the relocation start to happen right now?
Well, now you're preaching to the choir.
Because I think
if we can get them to Orlando before we get to the postseason, that would be the dream. No, I think they're just they would end up leaving a lot of money on the table with that. But there's just nothing you can do. And this is part of where I'm amazed by what Tampa is doing, because they had to the schedules were already set when the roof blew off the Trop and they had to move to Steinbrenner Field. So it's not like Major League Baseball could help them in terms of front loading the schedule with home games. They had to call teams around the league and say, will you switch our visit so that we can play more games at home before the summer rain of Florida sets in, which is you can set your watch to it. 5 o'clock during the summer, it's going to rain. That's not good for Major League Baseball and postponements. And a lot of teams said yes. Well, the Rays have a better win percentage on the road than they have at home. So it's not even that. It's just them. This is just what they do. It's amazing. I was looking at the Cal Raleigh contracts for the Seattle Mariners. This guy right now currently leads Aaron Judge by 4 home runs, leads Major League Baseball. He's on fire right now.
Yeah.
6 years, $105 million signed in March. How good is that deal looking?
It's looking great. There's a couple of options built in there too that he can make a little bit more with. But look, this is supposed to be year 1 of arbitration for him. Can you imagine what year 2 would have looked like? The cash breakdown for the next 3 years is essentially an even 11, 11, and 12 in terms of how things laid out. So they overpaid him this year in year 1 of arbitration, and they ended up underpaying him, right? Because they knew exactly what was about to come from, dare I say, the Big Dumper, which is the best nickname in all of sports right now.
Yes, it is.
But look, the arbitration process is going to pay him 11, 11, and 12 over the next 3 years. And then they've bought out at least 3 years of free agency. And unfortunately, because of the late start here, he's going to be 34 years old when this contract ends. So there's probably not another major cash in here for Cal Raleigh, especially at the catcher position. Certainly he can DH for a couple of years if he can hit like this, but this is probably it. This 6 for 105 is probably as good as it's going to get for him financially speaking, at least in a multi-year stance. So good on Seattle kind of seeing this one through. And unfortunately, there's probably 30 to 40 to 50 million left on the table here if he's really this kind of player for a bunch of seasons.
Yeah, it feels like one of the best bargains in baseball right now. The NHL and the NHL Players Association are negotiating a potential increase from 82 to 84 regular season games during their CBA talks. A 2-game increase that would create more of a balanced schedule between division rivals. That's the thought process behind it. Does this feel like a hill worth dying on for the NHL to just add 2 games to the regular season?
They have to do something. There's a bunch going on here with this next CBA actually, and part of it is about the notion that entry level contracts actually could become a little bit trimmer in terms of how old a player might be to get to that second contract. So they're trying to get players into bigger contracts quicker. They're trying to increase this salary cap more and more and more because it was flat for 3 straight seasons. And they kind of blamed that on some COVID buyback stuff. But let's just be honest. This is a league that's not printing money like the other 3 leagues in the American sports right now. So if by adding 2 games, it does something to boost any of this conversation, I think everybody's just going to have to buy in. So it sounds like actually CBA talks are going pretty well and that they're not going to have any kind of closure in terms of, having to lock out or having any really kind of significant battles back and forth here. So I think everybody just kind of buys in on the small adjustment to the schedule, a nice adjustment to the entry-level side of the rookie contracts, which, by the way, is going to get nasty in baseball in 18 months. And hockey will remain on the ice with a little bit longer schedule and maybe a touch more money for these players. So it seems like a pretty good win.
Okay, so we're not looking at any sort of lockout situation.
I don't think so. It seems pretty good. It seems pretty comfortable with where things are, and I think we'll be actually getting to an agreement within the next couple of weeks.
Let's get to our Bettor Edge bet of the week. Sports calendar drying up a little bit, but we still have a lot of Major League Baseball, still have WNBA. So I'll let you decide. How would you like to play this for our head-to-head bet? By the way, last week, good on you. You had the under in Game 7 of the Pacers and the Thunder, and you won that one with ease. Can you keep the streak alive? What are we looking at?
My bet just got ruined in real time. Like literally, I'm sitting on Bettor Edge right now. And of course, it updates perfectly right in front of me. And I go to the Twitter sphere to find out what just happened. But I had an Indiana Fever -11 against the Los Angeles Sparks WNBA bet tonight. And of course, Caitlin Clark just scratched. So I think we probably shouldn't do that one. So let's go back to baseball, where my Mets are floundering. They've been absolutely getting eaten alive by the Braves and the Phillies and everybody in this National League East right now. They've fallen back into second place despite scratching out a win against them last night. It is the primetime game tonight, the Mets and the Braves. It's kind of must win. The Mets are underdogs, believe it or not, to a Braves team that is still 9 games below them in the standings. Are you willing to take the Braves on the hot streak, and can I have my Mets for one more night?
Yeah. The Mets have been awful. The Mets have started to level out a little bit, but they went on a cold streak last week. I'm trying to pull up oh my God. I mean, still
7 in a row, like 8 out of 10. Awful. Yeah.
Yeah. They've been really bad. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. And I essentially get even money on the Atlanta Braves. I don't know much about Holmes, who's taking the bump tonight for the Braves, but I'll take the team that is less frigid than yours. And I just saw that Caitlin Clark move. She moved the line by 6 points. 6. Insane. That's reserved for like Nikola Jokic in the NBA. Great stuff. This episode presented by Bettor Edge. Sign up, try it out. Bet with your friends. Bet with us over at bettoredge.com. Use the promo code SPOTTRACK when you sign up for $20 upon your first arrival. Go ahead and subscribe and rate the pod that you're enjoying right now. We appreciate it. And make sure you check out SPOTTRACK.com. Constant updates on the website in the sports contractual world. Till next time, Mike. Good luck.
See ya.